नमस्ते सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणी विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा यतो हस्तस्थ तो दृष्टि यतो दृष्टिश्च तो मनः यतो मनःस्त तो भाव यतो भावस्त तो रसः आङ्गिकं भुवनं यस्य वाचिकं सर्ववाङ्मयम् आरायं चन्द्रकारादि तं नुमः सात्विकं शिवम् ॐ नमो विश्वेश्वराय महादेवाय त्र्यम्बकाय त्रिपुरान्तकाय त्रिकार्णिकालाय कालाग्निरुद्राय नीलकण्ठाय मृत्युञ्जयाय सर्वेश्वराय सदाशिवाय श्रीमन्महादेवाय नमः.
Thank you so much to Revati and Tanushri, Annettes of our own Rotarian Ram from Rotary Bangalore Whitefield Central. So it gives me great pleasure now to introduce our speaker for the day, Mr. Narayan Prasad, as I said, who is based out of Germany. I have known him for about a couple of years. My sincere gratitude to Aditya for getting me his introduction. Narayan Prasad is a co-founder at satsearch.co, which is a global marketplace for space supported by European Space Agency. He also serves as a partner to Space Park Kerala, a government of Kerala initiative to develop a dedicated space activities hub in India. Narayan believes that there is an opportunity to create a $25 billion space industry ecosystem in India by 2030, which can take space-based products and services from India to the rest of the world. He previously served as an associate research fellow at the European Space Policy Institute, where he contributed to enhancing cooperation between Europe and India in space. Narayan, as he wants himself to be called, has authored over 75 articles in various national and international publications and has previously studied in India, Germany, Sweden, and France. Narayan is also an elected member of International Institute of Space Law and an awardee of Emerging Space Leaders by the International Astronautical Federation. He is the host of the New Space India podcast and can be reached by email as well as by WhatsApp, which he welcomes. So before we get the speaker on board, I would request our district governor, Rotarian BL Nagendra Prasad, to formally inaugurate this unique initiative, Jnana Vaividya.
Yeah, good evening. Ellarku namaskara. Yeah, nice evening today. And first of all, let me congratulate our vocational service director, Prime Minister Radhakrishna. PM, his initial is PM. So I always call him Prime Minister. So he says I'm postmaster, but we have a fight on that. But still, I would like to call him Prime Minister today. After Ayodhya, I think our Radhakrishna has become more powerful now. Well, on the lighter side, but good move by our Manoj, who has been my president, Skyrocket president, who has been very active from Whitefield Center. Really has been connecting us to various people at various times. Thank you for that. And I feel at this part of movement, this vocational service is the most important thing now. A lot of people are losing jobs. A lot of people need a lot of new ideas, how to start and how to go about. And I think, first of all, on behalf of the district, let me thank Narayan Prasad, Mr. Narayan Prasad, for taking out this time and connecting us. Well, friends, as it is, this Zoom or the online has been helping us to connect in each part of the world, especially this COVID. As I keep saying every time, Rotary opens opportunities. So this Rotary has really opened up a lot of opportunities. And today I'm also happy to say that we opened up a COVID hospital today morning with the help of KSRTC, a 300-bed hospital in Pina, Bangalore. And that's another great opportunity the Rotary got. And after this COVID, a lot of things have been happening, and especially on the vocational, because today we are talking of vocational service. Let me talk about vocational service. I think on vocational service, every week, there are a lot of programs going on, and we have been connecting with a lot of stalwarts in this. And each one, what I feel is each one of them, the speakers are so happy to get connected to Rotary, and they are so happy to spend their time and give, share their knowledge. I think we should thank them for that wonderful gesture of theirs. Coming on the online or in physical doesn't matter, because especially online is becoming much easier now. We have been able to connect to any part of the world at any part of the time. So I wish the vocational team and also Manoj for taking out this time, and today's this Gnana Vaividya, I think a beautiful name has been given by them. And I'm sure this 12-day series is going to become 120 days series in the future. I'm sure about it. The way the district is going on now, it's on the membership, TRF, projects, or on the vocational service. Everything is, everybody were thought on the COVID. It was everybody thought, due to COVID, we are not able to go further, or we are not able to go in the pace what we had to. But what I find, friends, is the pace what we are going now, right now, is double the pace what we would have done in the normal course. That is what I've been observing. It's a membership or whatever you talk about, a project. And I think this is going to be a great connect, and a lot of opportunities are going to be open. And I also see my close friend, our PDG, past district governor, Rajendra also. And today afternoon, yes, we were together in Pina to start a regeneration of a lake. And Rajendra was also there as part of environment. We wanted to do one in Pina, which is a great thing. And I think Udyog and other clubs are going to join, and under Rajendra's leadership. And soon, I'm sure this is going to happen. A lot of things are happening in 3190. I congratulate each one of you for taking out time, new ideas, innovative ideas, and is really helping the society today. And I'm sure this great thing of our Gnana Vaividya is going to be a super success. I wish each one of you all the best. And I would like to assure you that Rotary District 3190 is always there to support and help at any part of time. And once again, I would like to thank Narayan Prasad, because always these Prasads are always, innovative people, and they always want to do something good for the society. Yes, Prasad. So I welcome you, sir. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. I think your encouragement and your motivation definitely makes us do more and more. So thank you so much. Can I request Dr. P.M. Radhakrishna to say a few words? He's the person who has coined this name, Gnana Vaividya. So that is his brainchild. So may I request Dr. P.M. Radhakrishna to say a few words before we hand over to Dr. Narayan Prasad to start.
You are not audible.
Good evening. Dear District Governors Nagendra Prasad, PDG Rajendra Rai, and President Manoj Kabre, and whole set of Rotarians, and the chief guest for the day, Narayan Prasad. Warm greetings from Vocational Service Team, District Vocational Service Team. What is vocational service? This is something unique for Rotary. The vocation of the person gets utilized for projects and services. And we talk about the diversity. The diversity is what makes the club or the community, and there's a great relationship between the club and the community. And taking it further, the diversity also brings in jnana from multiple angles, multiple corners, and especially as DG just now mentioned, during the COVID times, how do we exploit or how do we utilize this jnana to good of the society, to good of the community? That's how this Jnana Vaidvidya has come into being. We are trying to reach out to the best in the subject, and all the speakers in this 12-week series are of international fame. In fact, Narayan Prasad is connecting to us today from Germany. We have people getting into this series from Israel. So we have some wonderful guys coming in. Thank you, DG Nagendra Prasad, for supporting this. And Jnana Vaidvidya, as you said, may not be just 12 weeks. We can just do 120 days also, roping in other clubs also. So thank you so much, Oaktree Whitefield Central, to initiate this and host this particular program. Waiting to hear the talk from Narayan Prasad. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Vocational Service Director, Dr. P.M. Radhakrishna. And may I now call upon our chief guest for the day, our speaker for the day, Mr. Narayan Prasad, to go ahead with his address. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much all for this wonderful opportunity, and it's a great pleasure. I hope we could have done this more in person, but given the constraints of the situation, I suppose we have to stick to Zoom. So I'm sharing my screen, which has some of my slides in there. So I hope you can see that now.
Yes.
Okay, so given that this is a kind of a Rotary initiative, I'm basing my talk on two parts. One is, of course, looking at more of what is in it for vocational training, what is in it for young people, students who are trying to get into space technology, hobbyists, or even people who are practicing other fields who want to get a flavor for what is happening in space and how they can be involved by themselves in this particular field. It's an exciting field. We all know how successful the ISRO space program is and how good the image of ISRO is in the entire world. So, with that, keeping in that in mind, so I'm just going to have half of my talk more about this vocational stuff and more as something for young people, and then move further. So just to give you a background of myself, so I have a company which is actually registered in the Netherlands, but I live here in Germany, and we have our team is spread across different parts of Europe. And essentially we have built like Amazon for the space industry, and we work routinely with people from all over the world in helping them build satellites. So that's mostly kind of our background, and having studied in both India and most parts of Europe, I can kind of connect between the two places and see how there's some learning elements that come in from both the places that can be of great use to all of us. So in this part of the talk, I would like to more talk about what is space tech as a hobby, as a thing for teenagers, as a thing for young people, as to mature themselves as and then build up an interest to become real kind of professionals. So we all know that all of us are very interested in stars and galaxies, and we look towards it and want to do something with it. And almost half the people or young kids want to become astronauts at some point of time and want to take up space in some form or the other. And ultimately, it's about placing the right set of tools and providing the right set of guidance and creating the right set of knowledge between in all of them to help them build a career in space technology. And some of these elements here can be very useful in that sense. So the beauty of what is coming forward is that all of this are accessible to people in India. I have nothing in my slides that are based for people who are either in Europe or US or wherever. So I've basically tailored everything that I am going to say forward to somebody who is maybe even in a part of rural India to get access to today and get a flavor of doing something in space. So with that, caveat in place, the first thing that I actually wanted to talk about is everybody knows, are fascinated about rockets and how to get involved in rockets. This is something that is the most fashionable thing in the space industry. Possibly everyone in the country knows about Elon Musk and SpaceX and the PSLV and the ISRO related kind of rockets. But we don't know, we aren't sure how to get involved with it, because the term rocket science is termed to be one of the most complex things in the world. And people just shy away thinking this is really something for large governments or many other groups of people who have tons of money, but we can't get involved in it. But of course, it is in very small little ways, everybody can be involved in space in their own way. And essentially how you can begin with as a young kid, even if you're 5 or 10 years old, is by looking at how do you build some of these rockets in just paper models. So this is something that is accessible to anybody. You just need a printer, and these files are available for anybody for free on the internet. You can just download them, print them out, and give it to your kids, give it to your colleagues or whoever, and then they can get involved in knowing what is a rocket looking like, how do you actually put that together. And in fact, in this front, some people have made, if you go to this particular website, AXM Paper Models, I'll share this presentation later on, you can actually download the Indian rockets, the scaled model of Indian rockets, and you can actually print them out, cut them in paper, and you can assemble them yourself. And these are nice, even with the color in there. You can have these paper models, in your shelves and distribute it, and this can stand as a kind of interesting inspiration to many young people to know what is it that goes into actually building rockets. So it's a very precursory educational tool that tells people what are the different elements that are present in a rocket, and what is the real rocket made up of. Because we always look at the videos, and we often just are baffled with looking at those videos and the sound and the effects of it, but we don't really go into looking at what are the slight technicalities behind it. And this could be a great way of kind of communicating with a hands-on knowledge at literally no cost, 1 rupee for a printout, to print it out and say, go build the scale model up, and then you can learn something out of it. So you can see, there is the fairing, the different parts of the motor, the upper, the cone and everything else that you can build. And essentially that tells people this is a scale. And there is, of course, both the smaller and bigger rockets available in this paper models. So essentially you can scale that up, and you can know what are the difference between the different kinds of rockets as well. So this is I would say, the most low cost method of getting into some kind of knowledge into rocketry and how rockets are present today. You can get this for various rockets on this website. You will find tens of different rockets from different parts of the world. So you also get a flavor of what is being available in different parts of the world, and how you can learn through this website, this whole thing. And to get a little bit better flavor of what is available within India, we had a few friends of us who studied in IIST, which is the ISRO's university, and they eventually left ISRO, where they were working, to build a small startup in Bangalore. And they came together and built a very interesting small educational startup called Rocketeers. So, scale for somebody to get a kind of a hands-on overview into rockets, which involves small rockets. The best is to do model rocketry. Model rocketry is nothing, is an upscaled effort from Diwali rockets. In Diwali rockets, you have no clue as to how the trajectory all will be, and you just need to put something there and it goes away. But in here, you can get to experience a little bit about how rocketry is built in terms of thrust, in terms of going behind the technicalities of how high you can go, and how can you how exactly fuels work and everything. So they built this very interesting startup based in Bangalore, and today they have a web shop where you can just go and buy some of these model rockets at 1,000 or 2,000 rupees, and you can put it together and fly your own model rockets. And they've been also working with some schools where they can set up their own labs with model rockets and fly their own missions. So this was a very small video that you can see on how they worked with a rural school in India, in Telangana, where they put together this lab for this rural school in Telangana, where essentially it's a very low cost space tech lab to encourage young people to get into model rocketry. As you see, the methods and all the tools that they are using and the materials are very accessible to anybody, and potentially anybody can like use this as an inspiration to look at how to build low cost rockets. And one of the specialities, I think, I would say, is that if for now, for the last 20 or 30 years, model rocketry in India has been very not very accessible. And most of them who know about model rockets were importing a lot of them from US and Europe, where this has been a hobby for the last 100 years or so. But today you see some of these young innovators coming up in India, and they are showing you actual model rocketry and making it accessible for Indian conditions, and trying to integrate model rockets into school curriculum, where hands-on education can drive a lot of scientific thinking. And that way, the people are inspired than just rather looking at equations and boring exercises without any hands-on training involved. So I think this is a kind of a great initiative where you could look at how model rockets can actually be used. And this, I think, there's a large scope for many of these kinds of schools who want to get people excited about space to use such efforts to imbibe more of hands-on training. And everything done hands-on, of course, stays with you forever, because you never forget. You might forget an equation that you learned some time ago, but something that you did with your hands, you almost will never forget. So, and space is something where if you do something by hand, it inspires you to kind of do more and more of it. So that's a small video of how their model rockets work, and essentially, these are some of the inspirations for many of the engineers in many parts of the world to get into building larger rockets and building better technology. So as I said, this is one of the I've just taken a screenshot from the website that they have on their web shop. And you can see they have some of these model rockets that are available for anybody to go and get and experiment with it. And I think this is a fascinating development in space education in India, as I see it, where people can now access model rocketry and look at using model rocketry based education to learn about getting into space related technology. So moving further, I don't know how many of you Rotarians are ham radio enthusiasts or hams. Essentially, ham radio is been around for several decades, in fact, more than a century, I suppose, where essentially you can, at your own free time, if you have a little bit of an edge for engineering, a little bit of an edge for electronics and electrical stuff, you can actually build your own hardware to contact satellites, contact astronauts, build some technology to talk to each other. And before the invent of social media, internet, and any kind of communication, this used to be the go-to social media tool for everyone out there, because there was no way of communicating or maintaining contact at a people-to-people level in the 1950s and the 60s, with no, not really the spread of telephones and everywhere not present. And essentially, the cheapest way to do that was through ham radio, where you could build your own, antenna set, and you could communicate both locally if you had a smaller antenna, and if you built a larger antenna using these pipes and very low-cost cabling, you could then speak to somebody in Russia or Europe or even other parts of the world. And when astronauts started going up, this became a very big hit of trying to establish contact to their space stations and trying to have a window of contact to them while they can establish a contact for anybody on the ground. So in India, of course, the number of people trying to do ham radio and amateur radio is quite small, considering Japan or many other parts of the world. But it's still quite a vibrant community, and it allows you to then access this at your own convenience, at your own home. You can have an antenna setup like what you used to have in a TV station to receive TV channels maybe 20, 30 years ago. You can have your own such a setup and look at how you can build up your skills in terms of radio frequency related skills. So this is a fascinating hobby. And when I was in India, I was a ham as well, and I have a ham license, which is for India as well. It's a very simple examination that you can give, and there are many ham clubs in Bangalore, for example. It's one of the biggest cities that has a ham activity in India, and you can get involved in the community there. And I have pasted a link here from AMSAT, which is the amateur radio satellite community. And essentially, it's a fascinating community to be involved in, because they have many satellites which amateur people have themselves built in their own garages, and they have put that out into space to have to do different kinds of radio experiments and to allow communication between people of their own. So this is totally not it is like having to create your own Airtel and Jio up in space, and creating an amateur network where volunteers are coming together to put in projects where they are trying to do some really interesting hobby with science and technology. So this is, you can also use this for many other things. People use it in disaster management. So if you know, for example, when there are large scale floods, for example, many telecommunications towers are destroyed, and you might not have any connectivity available on the ground. In many places like Kerala, Odisha, and many other places where floods are very, very often. And one of the things that you see is immediately the ham radio enthusiasts, they try to establish connection between the local community that is there. And even if somebody is from the local community is a ham, he can then immediately set up an antenna to tell the outside world what is the situation there, and give people from who are trying to give them help situation of the ground. Because at that point of time, nothing in your GSM and cell phones may actually work. And in this case, if you have a ham radio enthusiast there, he can easily establish contact and tell if there is what is the location, how many people are stuck, what is the requirement, if there is somebody injured, what is the exact location, for anybody who is a part of the disaster management team to come and help them and get a sense of a real situation on the ground, to get to know the real situation on the ground. So this is also a service that people can do as ham radio enthusiasts, which are specific for India. You can get involved in ham radio communities that go in specifically to deal with disaster management and disaster communication, and help them support, while they are trying to recover from a particular disaster. And so moving further, I have for somebody who is really interested in photography. I know there's a lot of photography enthusiasts, and space is a big part of photography. People do wildlife photography, people do all kinds of portrait photography and all the other kinds, sports photography and everything. But not many people experiment with photographing the Milky Way and the universe. And this is, in fact, something that you can do on your own time. And of course, you might not be able to do anything like this based in Bangalore, because of the light pollution that is existing in the city. But if you go slightly away from the city and you go to a remote place, this is, for example, an image of the Milky Way in a time-lapse kind of a mode. So where you see the person is actually capturing the stars out in that's the Milky Way that you actually see. The rest of the and essentially, you see the rotation of the Earth over time here actually. So this is done through you can use simple digital cameras that you have, and whatever is the kind of a digital camera setup you have, you can actually try to go to a remote place and see what kind of stars and what kind of constellations and galaxies you can map. So this is a very, very interesting hobby for people who want to set up and experiment, with their own lenses, with their own kind of setup, and look at discovering different parts of the universe. So this is something that I've seen not many communities in India still grow up to do. There's a very small community, I think, in Bangalore that does some part of astrophotography, but I think there's a lot of room for people to pick this up as a hobby, and look at mixing their passion for photography with astrophotography. So for people who are not so much into photography but are into looking at the stars and looking at what they can do with respect to asteroids and many other galaxies and many other things that are flying around in the universe, this could be something of a more serious tool. It's an open source tool to hunt for asteroids. As you know, there are billions of asteroids that are around in our own galaxy, and there is always a hunt for knowing where space objects are. And we all know many comets that people track, and many of the things that people say that this thing is coming very close to the Earth, and this is only like a few 100 million kilometers from the Earth, and one such rock is what hit the Earth and created the moon. And essentially you have this particular software that is available as an open source software, and you can see many communities, especially in and around Delhi. There's a large group of people who train school students in identifying these space objects, and in fact they conduct almost campaigns or challenges of trying to help these teenagers to identify new objects in the universe. And this is called asteroid hunting, and this is a tool that anybody and everybody can choose. And in many cases, these the people who find it, it's they get to then have an asteroid discovered by themselves. So that's an exciting piece of work that a lot of schools at least up in Delhi that I know a group of people are trying to do. So this is, I think, again, this is an open source software. As I said, anybody can download it at your own convenience. You can install it on your PC and start experimenting and knowing. And there's a big community that can support you in kind of knowing more and more about it. So moving further, there's always people who are interested in games, especially computer games, and mobile phone games are a very big hit among young people. And there's a way that you can learn about space also through them. So space enthusiasts are very big fans of having simulation software where people can actually learn something about building rockets and satellites in a simulation environment. And some years ago, the people created a new software, which is basically a simulation game. It's a space simulation game where you can build your own missions, where you can build your own rockets and satellites. And it actually has to be technically validated for it to really function the way it has to work. So it's not simply building blocks like Lego or something, but you have to really have some sort of calculations going correctly for you for this simulation to actually work. So through that, people are trying to get a sense of what is it to build rockets and satellites like. So this is a game that is available where you can download and have a look. And I just tried to get a clip from somebody from YouTube who tried to create a rocket that can go directly to the moon here. So this is a very simple image where you have to you have your own kind of vehicle assembly building, and you are then trying to piece together different elements of the rocket, and you can look at different kind of stage assemblies that you can try to do. You can have various boosters that you can assemble where you can achieve different kind of thrust levels. And after you assembled everything, you can actually test and fly the whole thing. And it actually, it actually works very, very well. and you can look at how the rocket is going to perform. And in fact, if you have not done something right, it will also fail and tell you this is exploded, or this is it's not working anymore. So you can choose to do different. Here in this simulation, we have one for a rocket, but you also can do Chandrayaan, you can do Mangalyaan mission, you can model many things in there. You can have your own space station that you will build and simulate up in the software. So this is a great tool for anybody who wants to learn about how to get to use space tools and learn a little bit more about the physics elements of such things. So in this case, you are learning about a lot of the physical elements in terms of thrust, in terms of escaping gravity, and many other technical aspects of interplanetary spaceflight and what is involved in all of it. So whoever wants to get involved in such thing, I would suggest go and download this particular game, and it's a simulation game where you can get involved. But unfortunately, I think this is not a free game, I suppose. But I don't think so. It costs more than a few hundred rupees. I think 300 or 500 rupees for you to like access this thing even in India. So there's definitely something worthwhile if you are looking to give it as a gift to some young people who are interested in space and enthusiastic about learning more about how do you use something more than PUBG, I suppose. So yeah, so this, you see, this is a rocket that is actually going on a Mars ascent. So the guy is trying to land, build a rocket that can actually land on Mars. So that's mostly this simulation game. So this part of my talk, was talking more about being a hobbyist and trying to get a flavor for what you can do in space. But from the next part of this particular talk, I would like to more talk about how do you get involved professionally, because not many people will know many opportunities that are available beyond ISRO, which is very popular for employment. But if you have to work beyond ISRO and be involved in space more professionally, these are some of the avenues I would say that you could watch out for, and so on. So I don't know that if many of you know, we have a very bright startup ecosystem in India for space. We have about 50 new private startup companies that have formed in the last 10 years. Most of them around the Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Chennai belt, with almost 50-60% of them based in actually Bangalore. So today, we have all of these companies trying to build anything from rockets to satellites to space applications in a different and many of them have actually exited ISRO, their professions, their jobs as scientists, and they have come out to form their own private companies, seeing an opportunity for them to create a new product or a service and service both the local and the global market. So some of you might know Team Indus, which is one of the most prominent ones. But there are, of course, today many of them who have come. And these are some of the very young companies that are out there. Skyroot, for example, and Agnikul, they are two companies that are trying to build rockets. And Skyroot, for example, is formed by a couple of friends of mine who were previously scientists at ISRO, spent about 10 years there, and then now they have come out as private entrepreneurs trying to build their own rocket. And so last couple of weeks ago, we had an announcement from ISRO to allow private rockets to be flown out of Sriharikota. So we might see a day come by in the next 2 or 3 years where one of these companies might test their own first private rocket out of India, and it's something very enthusiastic to see coming out of India. There are, of course, other inspirational teams that have come about. One is two other companies that are very inspirational are these teams from Pixel and Bellatrix Aerospace. These are essentially, BITS and one of the other local colleges in Bangalore graduates who are 21, 22, and are trying to build their own satellites and propulsion systems and selling abroad. So you see the potential that they have. They have gone on to raise money from investors from all around the place, and employ about 50-60 people today, and are trying to sell their products and services from all around the world. And that is one of the most exciting things to see, where people who are 21, 22 are able to build such technical things, and they're able to raise investor confidence to be able to get such sort of support. And I hope we will see that these companies will form a kind of a revolution that we had in the IT sector and the biotechnology sector, and create a space sector revolution where many of these companies are employing people locally and selling Indian products to all over the world, not just local market, but are competing to many other geographies using the low cost manufacturing and the base that is based in India. So I'm going to talk about what is some of the potential for anybody and everybody to be involved professionally, and how they could be opportunities that you might see based on your own experience, to look at space as a tool for you to be professionally involved. So as space enthusiasts, we always just maybe focus on the rockets and the satellites, but actually space is more than that. It is more about trying to build something for the society, where you could use space as a tool in terms of benefiting the society. We all know what happened when mobile phones became accessible to Indians, and the market that created, and the demand it created, and the services that it brought. We all know how the Flipkarts and the other services that have come up just because mobile phones became cheap. And space and satellites are something like that. They are essentially tools for people to build services on top. Many people might not know India is one of the pioneers in using space for benefit of the society, where in 1970s and the 80s, when India was experimenting with space, one of the first experiments was to connect 1,200 villages using satellite communication, to provide them with satellite television instruction. So basically providing them agriculture, farming, and many other healthcare related programs in local languages, so that in a mass scale 1,200 villages can be given programs using satellite based connectivity, using experts who are in rural agriculture, who cannot travel to those 1,200 villages at the same time, but they can in one go train all of them in one shot. So that was the biggest sociological experiment done during that time in the world. I think it still stands today as one of the biggest sociological experiments that was done in any field, having such massive groups of people get involved in such an effort. So space can be used, space data can be used for different communities, space communication can be used. We all know what GPS does for every one of us, trying to navigate the city, trying to navigate between cities. Even the person who is today a Swiggy or a Zomato or any other delivery person is using GPS to deliver food and the basic things, but we never think of the satellites that actually power all of them, and that provide actually the facilities, and that service is provided for free. Nobody has to pay for GPS, but people always forget. And even if you go today to an ATM that is close by to you, next to you, you might not know that that ATM is actually powered by a satellite that is sitting 36,000 kilometers away, because you cannot rely on many connectivity issues, and satellites provide this connectivity link between your bank and that ATM. So as consumers, we only look at the satellite from the ATM front end, and we put in our cards and put in our keys and know how much money we want to take. We always forget there's something behind it that works. And that something behind in this case is actually, in India's case, more than 200,000 ATMs being powered by satellite connectivity. So unfortunately, we know we have failed to communicate the utility of space to the society in India, and to tell people how space powers their life. And many people who are critical of investments in space, they always complain about how India should be investing more in toilets than in satellites. But they don't know that, you know, every person in India, even a rural villager who is trying to access an ATM today, is actually using satellite networks in some form or the other. So let's look at some of the issues that are in play here and how you can get involved. So today there is a revolution going on where thousands of satellites are being put up for various things. Just to last week, Jeff Bezos from Amazon decided to pump in about $10 billion in creating his own satellite network from Amazon, which will involve 3,500 satellites. And Jeff Bezos has also invested in his own rocket company called Blue Origin, where he's creating his own rocket company that will put these satellites up. So essentially, this is a project to connect the entire world through internet, and that internet is provided by satellites. So this will mean that you can get satellite up in air, in your aircraft, on the ground, on a ship, in the sea. Even a small boat can get internet. So this is a massive transformation that is happening around the world to provide communication support to all of them. So people are now connecting cars, they're connecting trains, they're connecting aircraft, they're connecting ships, and they're connecting all sorts of machines to this kind of a network, hoping that connectivity will bring in more productivity. And through that, you know, we will create a digital economy overall. So, and I don't know if you have followed it, but recently even Bharti Airtel bought an American company which is trying to build a satellite internet. Last 2 weeks ago, Bharti Airtel won a bid with the British government to take over a particular company, and they are trying to now take over this company to provide space-based internet. Internet is only one particular application. There are many other applications. We all know what television has been doing. Every remote part of India today has a dish on top of its house, even a small hut, and that is actually connected to a satellite. And there are, of course, eye in the sky with satellite-based imaging, telling us about our farms, telling us about our minerals, how it is being used, telling us about our forests, telling us about the water and the rivers and everything else. And we will look at some of the applications and look at how this is being used. So firstly, this is one of the biggest things that is going to transform India, I would think, in the next decade or so. As you know, India has about 600,000 villages. And out of the 600,000 villages, we still have a large part of the country not being connected through to high-speed broadband and high-speed internet. Of course, we might have very small 2G or 3G networks in rural part of India, but nothing compared to what we are connecting with, like, for example, Zoom on broadband internet. And if these people are provided this kind of connectivity, you can think of all the things that you can build on top. It could be villages, it could be village centers, it could be panchayats, it could be hospitals, it could be remote assets that are all powered through internet. And the best way to do it today is not to lay fiber, because if you have to lay fiber for 600,000 villages, it will take us 100 years to do it. With all the clearance that's and all the the amount of money that you would need. But if you would use satellite-based internet, like people have been using dishes to connect to satellite television, they can start using these dishes to connect to internet and have all their devices and all infrastructure, including e-governance, to take place through remote broadband. And this is one of the things to watch out for in India in the next coming decade, where you will see in more parts of rural India, you will see connectivity coming up and people being connected to the internet. And this will also create a terrestrial base for a lot of the commerce solutions. Because today, if many other companies are trying to reach that part of the rural India, the connectivity becomes a very big issue for them. Even if service companies like Amazon or Flipkart today have to reach rural areas, then they'll have to have enough connectivity for those people to connect on a regular basis, on a more frequent basis. But essentially, if this is treated as infrastructure, that is to be created for that to happen, then you can imagine the kind of a market that can be built on top of this digital model. So this is one of the most exciting things to watch out for. Second is safety. Today, there is a lot of areas in the country which require connectivity for worker safety, for safety of our military, safety of our workers in many other risk zones, or even, for example, worker safety of our elderly who we want to stay connected to no matter where. So if it could be somebody who is also trekking in the parts of Himalayas, or in many other parts of India where there are hardly any connectivity solutions. So today, this is an exciting area where we could look at creating models based on satellite-based connectivity, providing them, all of them, a backbone to then provide this kind of safety net to have them connected to their families, to know about their particular safety, and to ensure that we're all connected and safe. Further, this is a revolution that is coming as well. Some of you might have experienced aircraft connectivity, where you can connect to in flights through international travel, through Wi-Fi. And of course, as of today, that is still very weak, and it might be very patchy, the connection on the even in the international flights. But soon you will see, even within India, if you will go on your Indigo or Go Air or any other flight, you might have a way to connect to internet and stay connected to your work, and to answer emails, and to do other things through the internet. So you might not actually have cell phone connectivity through GSM network to Airtel or Jio, but for sure you might have satellite-based internet powering the aircraft and providing you a solution. If you're traveling between Thiruvananthapuram and Delhi for a 3-hour flight, you can still keep working and be productive, answering your emails and messages, and that's powered through satellites. And even if you're taking a ship and going from one part of Chennai to Andaman Islands or many other places today, there's a solution coming for people who want to stay connected through the ocean, because you don't have the traditional GSM towers sitting there and providing you a solution, and you can still remain connected. So further, there is a lot of concepts coming up to even connect cars, where you can go down to the level of diagnostics. Let's say you're driving through a very rural part of the country, and you're driving through a highway and there's no connectivity for you, and your car breaks down. There's a solution coming up where the diagnostics of the car can actually be connected to through the satellite, and through that, the technician sitting in some part of Bangalore or Delhi are able to tell exactly what has gone wrong with your car, even if you're lost in some part of the country. So that's the level of solutions that are being integrated. And this is one of the things that you could look at satellites providing solutions and the connectivity to. So if you are in the car business, or you're in somebody in the airline business, or somebody in the cruise and the tourism business, there's something for you to think about here as to how satellites can actually create this layer of productivity, and create this layer of safety or any other opportunity for you. So some of the other parts is I talked more on the connectivity side, but now let's look at what the eye in the sky can do, which is the cameras that are spaced up in space. You can see a satellite-based image here, which are a false colored image, which is telling you different parts of essentially agricultural fields. And this is one of the most exciting things that are happening in India. So as we all know, satellites can tell you, I don't know if many of you know, satellites can tell you what is the kind of crops being grown on the ground, because essentially the image that you take, it captures a certain wavelength, and through that you can match particular wavelength and the characteristic of that image, and you can tell if somebody is growing rice, or somebody is growing corn, or somebody is growing sugarcane, and through that you can imagine all the things that we can actually do. So I'm going to talk about a specific problem that people are trying to solve in India, which is one of the most exciting things I would say that is happening in India that can scale to many other parts of the world, including Africa and Latin America. So we all know how difficult it is, the life for farmers in India. And even today, about 20 to 30% of lending in terms of rural agriculture is through the traditional landlord, the kind of village, based non-institutional banking, where you go to a person, you take money at 2-3% interest every month, and you try to use that to buy seeds, and then you are in debt with if the seed fails. And there's still the institutions, including banks, they struggle to reach rural India and to penetrate even today. And one of the fundamental problems there is that banks operate on certainty. They should operate on certainty, and they should operate on risk that is managed. So we know when a person is borrowing housing loan, they look at how safe that loan is based on de-risking the investment by knowing the person and the background of the person and his income levels. But unfortunately, in many of the sectors like agriculture, there is no data available on how credit-worthy farmers are. Also, because these farms are very small, they often are 2-3 acres in size. People have not collected very concretely or maintained digital records on how productive their farms have been for the last few years. So because of all of this reason, banks have traditionally used, either government has to provide subsidy by providing some sort of keeping good faith, or banks have to have some other mechanism to subsidize the farmer and to de-risk their investment, and or either depending on the government or the taxpayer. So traditionally, this is the way that banking works in India, where essentially when somebody is applying for a loan, you have the CIBIL score and many other basically paperwork being established for the history of the farmer, but we don't have a digital means to capturing his record of his farming. And there's also abuses on both the ends, where either the loan is denied because of certain reasons, or the loan is taken and that it is utilized for some other thing. In many cases, it's been reported to use for a marriage or any other issue which has come up. And so either the bank loses or the farmer loses in many cases. So essentially today, satellite data has the potential to transform this whole thing by creating a record which is based on scientific evidence and digital data. How it is done is by this method, where today you have land image available for the last 25 to 30 years for every farm in the country. And essentially what people are trying to do is they are trying to know how productive these farms are over the last 7 to 10 years. So which means that if a farmer comes and applies to a bank, you know exactly where the coordinates of that farm is, because the farmer owns the land or is operating on that land. You know the GPS location of the land. And what people are trying to do is to create an algorithm which will use satellite data from the last 5 to 7 years to know what that farmer has been growing in the last 5 to 7 years there, and how productive his farm is. If he's growing 2 acres of rice, how much rice has he grown? How productive is his land? Is he applying just because he has land and he's not grown at all? There are many questions out there, right? So you cannot do this for 600,000 villages in India if you have to send people and do this on a manual basis. So if you use satellite data and you create a model where banks can look at sitting at their desks, bank managers can sit at their desk and they can just put in the latitude and longitude of the particular farm. They can get a score based on how this particular farm has been producing in the last 7 to 10 years, which crop they have grown, what is the yield of it, and then you can match the yield against the market price to know how productive that farm is. So if somebody applies for a 50,000 rupee loan and he says, I'm proposing to grow rice in this farm in this particular season, they can then go back and check to see what has been the performance of the farm in the last 5 to 7 years, and then take a very quick call. if this particular farm is a risky investment that the bank is doing, or it's a de-risked investment that it is doing. And the fascinating thing here is, even after the loan is sanctioned, you can monitor if that farmer is using it for the right reasons. You can monitor the inputs being used. You can look at if the seedlings have been there, if the crop has come up, and you can look at if the crop has been destroyed due to floods or due to drought or due to other reasons, and you can immediately link that to insurance, and the bank can then claim insurance on the loan in case there is a crop failure, and to use scientific basis instead of manual methods to look at the monitoring the whole process. Through this, you can ensure that penetration of rural banking becomes 100% in India, and this informal lending basis at very high interest rates can be removed, and essentially you can create a completely institutionalized banking system which essentially uses satellite data along with other inputs, and you can transform the way agriculture is done through the entire country. And people talk about doubling farmers' income, and this is one of the most critical part of doubling farmers' income, by trying to use space technology to integrate it into the farming process. And this, as you see, this is traditionally also maybe the problem that people in many other parts of the world, including Africa and large part of Latin America, may be facing. Even the banks there may be facing such a same problem. And essentially, if Indian companies are able to solve this problem, they can very easily export this solution to Africa and many other countries. So there are many challenges. I would say there are many other examples, many other companies doing a lot of things. I recently came across a company that is using satellite data along with other information to create a smartphone application for fishermen to know where exactly to go and fish. So they use satellite data to map where exactly the phytoplankton is on the sea, through sea surface temperature and through satellite imagery, and through that they can tell exactly where the coordinates of the fish is, and they mix that with local weather requirements, and so that the fishermen also take the GPS location, which means that fishermen who are getting captured by Sri Lankan army, Sri Lankan Navy, or the Pakistani Navy by drifting into their waters can be avoided. They can be safety of the fishermen due to cyclones and other events, where the notification can be sent out as to what timing they should be heading out to, and the exact location they maybe have to go to get a better catch. Studies have shown that this has increased fish catch by 50% for most of these kind of fishermen, and it has reduced the diesel consumption on their boats, and it has increased their safety and access to market. And now the most fascinating part of this is that they are trying to integrate all of this into a marketplace, where essentially even the fish produce that they have got, that can be integrated directly into the supermarkets, and there's a direct link between the supermarkets and these fishermen. So this is again an excellent application of satellite data transforming the entire fishing community, with India having 7,000 kilometers of coastline. So today, there are local challenges in India. There are very fundamental challenges of air quality, quality of water and sustainability of water, climate change and renewable energy. All these are very, very, very big problems in India. I recently read a study that the air quality in Delhi is removing 5 years of life from every citizen there. So one of the things that satellite can do is provide all these sensors and all the inputs for all of these. So essentially, it's all about taking that data and creating services and information for people to take decisions on top. So far, we've seen how productive all of that can be. So if you are somebody who is in any of these sectors, you could look at trying to use satellite data to see if you can actually use some of it to transform this and provide solutions, or you can integrate that into your own sector and try to see if there is any productivity out there. So I run a particular podcast, which Manoj also said, which is called the New Space India podcast. You can look at it on YouTube, Apple, Google, or any other podcasting platforms that you may use. And essentially, in this, it is India's only space-focused podcast where we have young people who are trying to use space in different forms. They are, I have them as guests on the podcast where they talk about what solution are they building and how is it important for India to use that particular thing, or what is the, how we can do space in new ways which can transform the Indian ecosystem. So I would definitely invite you to check out some of the episodes where all the companies, some of the companies that I talked about, a lot of the co-founders of all of these companies have come on the show and talked about the product that they are trying to build. So if you want to deep dive into the sector and to know, are enthusiastic about learning more about what is happening in space, I would definitely invite you to come check this out. So with that, I want to end this particular talk, and we have a small Telegram group for space enthusiasts. So if you want to join this group and stay connected to the space community in India, you can as well come and join our Telegram group and be a part of it. So with that, I would thank all of you for giving me this wonderful opportunity to talk to you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Wonderful, Narayan. I think the way you covered almost all the topics that we wanted was probably a 2020 match played in the format of Test cricket. If I may, in simple words, try to combine that. I think you really made me go back into my yesterworld or yesteryears, college time or school time, when we used to listen to this ham stuff and always used to wonder what is this ham all about, you know? And you so vividly, in fact, we have a question also from Mr. Rotarian S. Gopal about that in the question box, which you can take later. But I think a wonderful presentation, a really good digital applause, I should say, to you in the form of, so I would say soundless applause, if I may say, because most of the people are on mute. But thank you so much. And I can certainly see a great possibility for Rotary District 3190 to kind of curate something collaboratively with you. And we will definitely take this forward again under the guidance of Dr. P.M. Radhakrishna later, in terms of how this can really move forward and enable, various farmers that you talked about or various students to utilize their time rather than playing games and these things. But probably you do these kind of things and take the Indian reputation to greater heights through the excellent young population that we have. So thank you once again.
Thank you.
At this juncture, can I request PDG Rotarian Rajendra Rai to do the honors of giving this citation of District Vocational Service Award to our speaker, Mr. Narayan Prasad.
Okay, thank you, President Mahesh, Secretary Mayank, and then our Director for the Vocational Services, Dr. Radhakrishnan, and the Club Director for Vocational Services, Rajaraman, for having given me this opportunity to participate in this interesting address by Narayan in a series of lectures under the heading Jnana Vaividya. So, Mahesh, is an excellent initiative from your side, and I would, whenever I have time, I think probably I should be joining you as often as possible, because Rotary is one forum which makes you exposed to many different variety of occasions world over. And today we had the privilege of listening to Narayan, who is speaking from Berlin. Now, a lot of people have felt that COVID has actually restricted our movements and also put our life upside down. But then I believe that it has opened up opportunities for us to interact with the people across the world, and that's a great opportunity. Before I present this excellent award, Vocation Excellence Award to Narayan, can I take 2-3 minutes, President Mahesh?
Sure, sir. Sure. Manoj.
Okay. Well, I don't know how far Narayan is familiar with Rotary. Rotary is an international organization of business professional community leaders united worldwide. In fact, Germany is one of the fast-growing Rotary country in the world. We are primarily, we provide humanitarian service and also we encourage high ethical standards in our vocations and in our life, in our daily life. We also help to advance world understanding, goodwill, and peace. This is all about Rotaries. And one of the avenue of service under which this particular talk has been organized by Director Radhakrishna is called occasional services, one of the 5 avenue of services for Rotary. Under this, you see, our object is to basically occasional services come under one of the objects of Rotary, which calls for maintaining high ethical standards in business and professions and recognition of worthiness of all useful occupations. Now, this is where recognizing a person like you comes about, you see, because it's our constant desire to recognize worthiness of useful occupation, and we are honored today by your presence, and we believe that by recognizing you, we are trying to encourage you to, spur you into furthermore activities and see that you achieve greater excellence in your chosen occupation. Narayan, we are aware that you are one of those young achievers who has been working in the virgin field of space research. Now, we all know that Government of India has recently announced that the private participation of the industry in space research or space research is being encouraged. Earlier, it was the domain of ISRO. Now, anybody and everybody could join and explore the possibility of, putting up a business or an enterprise. Your address also talked about it, and I was amazed to hear that more than 50 entrepreneurs in and around the southern part of India are already working on that. And the applications of space research has been very nicely depicted by you today. Okay, before I, let me also read out the citation before I virtually hand over this Occasional Excellence Award by one of the young clubs in our district, Rotary Bangalore, Whitefield Central. It's a great club, and I'm very happy that it's led by a dynamic young leader like Mahesh. Now, Rotary 3190 and the Rotary Bangalore Whitefield Central jointly bestow Rotary Vocational Excellence Award to Mr. Narayan Prasad, co-founder of Stats Search Company, in recognition of excellence achieved in his chosen field of vocation and contributing to the good of the society for Jnana Vaividya Vocational Diversity Speaker Series. This is presented by the club and the district on 5th of August 2020. And this particular award has been signed by Dr. P.M. Radhakrishnan, Director of Vocational Service for the District 3190, Rotarian Rajaraman, Director of Vocational Service at club level, President Manoj Kabre, President of Rotary Bangalore Whitefield Central, and Rotarian Mayank Agarwal, Secretary of Rotary Bangalore Whitefield Central. I know when you come to India, probably physically we'll hand over this citation as well as award to you, but today we are only handing over this award virtually. Let me wish you all the very best, my dear friend. And I'm sure, you see, with your knowledge and expertise, you see, you'll help a number of industries in India to explore and expand their business and enterprises in the space arena. So all the very best. God bless you. And thank you, President Mahesh and your team. And thank you, Radhakrishnan.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your elaborate words about very apt work being done by Narayan. And I think we need more and more such people to give back to the country, although they are working outside India. And that's something which I would like to appreciate about Narayan, that although he's outside India, but he has been doing a lot of work. There is a lot of other avenues where we are connected and we have been doing some collaboration, I would say. And this is really good. So we have some time to take a few questions, and I have one question in the chat box, Narayan, if you may want to look at that by Rotarian S. Gopal, who also incidentally probably used to be the colleague of your mother. So the world is really small. So if you have seen the question in the chat box, if you may want to go ahead and reply.
Yeah, it says, okay. How to kindle this passion to some low-cost models to school children. Yeah, and as I said, you know, I'm happy to pass this the model rocket printouts, the one which is the PDF files of them. I'm happy to put that, you know, give it out to you and send it to you by email so you can have a look at it. I'm also happy to connect you to some of the clubs that I know, which are ham clubs, where they'll be happy to kind of come and essentially demo some of this to kids, because they are also, like many of you, volunteers. So there is a possibility that they can come and demo some of it. And of course, there is many of them who are entrepreneurs who I know personally as well. So there's more than good enough chance that they will come and be happy to come and give a talk to many of these locations. So please just get in touch with me by email, and I'm happy to like make all of these connections.
Great. Thank you so much. Of course, there are appreciating and comments about the informative presentation. There is one question from Chikanna, which says very valuable insights on space application. Can we enhance remote sensing capabilities, geophysical scanning of deep aquifers? A very specific and technical question.
Yeah, so this is a particular topic that is currently underway, because digitization of land records is a very big topic in India at the moment. And essentially, you know, the space has a part to play in it, because essentially with space coming into play, you can now digitize the entire land records of India, and look at not just for real estate and other applications. It could be many other things where you could then use that for giving subsidies. You can look at it for land use mapping. You can look at food security. You can look at many other issues with all of this. Now the only question is, since a lot of this is based on governance and based on how governments can be effective, and there's also this central and federal, because of the federal nature of state and center in India,